Alright, now we have chapter 4, risk management. I kind of like the quote here. Once we know our weaknesses, they cease to do us any harm. Kind of cool idea. Once we know what's going to cause us issues, don't worry about it so much. Take care of it. Alright, let's continue. Alright, we're going to talk a whole bunch of stuff here, all this stuff. Okay. Alright, it says here, an overview. Know yourself, identity, examine, and understand the information and systems currently in place. Alright. Do you know what you even have? A lot of people don't even realize what they have. They don't know how to manage it. They don't know how to protect it. Okay? This is know the enemy. Identify, examine, and understand threats facing. What are some of the threats facing organizations? Well, here at my work, it could be theft. It could be viruses. It could be irate students. Okay? It's the responsibility of each community of interest, within an organization to manage the risks that are encountered. So if you come across a new risk, should you just ignore it? Okay? We didn't always have virus threats, but now we do. So we have to change the way we do things to protect against them. Okay. So the first thing we have here is risk identification, then risk assessment, then risk control. Okay. First of all, we're going to find out what we got. Now the first little box there, I don't know if I can use my mouse for this, but this box right here, identify and inventory assets. What do you have? Way back when I was getting my first master's degree, we had a guy come in and speak from the GM plant. The one on I-240, the one that used to be the GM plant. He came in and spoke. He spoke about their IT infrastructure. Okay, and the area he actually covered a lot about was identify and inventory assets. He spoke to everybody in the area there pretty much and said, hey, how many printers does this organization have? And I don't remember the exact numbers, but basically it comes down to, they shared printers, so there was, some, but not one for every person. Figure 50% of the people had printers, stuff like that, okay? Well, when they actually did an inventory of it, it turned out they actually had more printers than people. They actually had more than one printer per person. When I ran my consulting business, I talked about it last time about Chapel Supply, they literally had a printer for every single person. And I told him, I said, why? That is such a waste. File and printer sharing is the number one use of a network. Why are you not sharing printers? And what they told me? Well, we don't like to have to get up from our desk whenever we print something. Wow. Laziness at its peak. All right. So first of all, what do you have for assets? Which one's more important? Okay, I got, a chair. Is the chair more important than my computer? Probably not. Okay. Then identify and prioritize the threats. Again, what are the threats? Viruses, theft, environmental. Which one? Which one's the most important? Now, if we're talking May and June, probably environmental. Theft, probably all year long. Okay, so now I'm recording this and it's the middle of August. What is the probability that we'll have a freeze tonight? Probably 0. So I would say the threat of a freeze tonight is 0. But if we're talking December, January, the threat of a freeze could be very high. So really the threats can change. All right, then the assessment phase. Identify vulnerabilities between the assets and the threats. Okay, so I have a computer and I know we have viruses. So what's the chance that I would get viruses? Okay, so that's how I can identify the vulnerabilities. Okay, it says identify and quantify asset exposure. How exposed is my computer? Well, it's connected to a network, but it is behind a firewall. So that is better than nothing. It's your home network. Do you have a firewall in place? Do you have a router in place? A lot of people don't. Then the controls. What are we going to do to protect against these? Now that we know the vulnerabilities that are out there, now that I know I can get a virus and I have a computer, maybe I should get a virus protection. Speaking of that, Microsoft Security Essentials is free. So if you're using those AVG or any of those, get rid of them. They're crap. Excuse my language. Microsoft Security Essentials is free for life. Get it. They need to justify this stuff. So if we're going to put a firewall in that costs thousands of dollars, how can I justify spending thousands of dollars? Well, I'm protecting from lots of threats. So, you really need to be able to justify, and without the justify portion, if I don't sit here and identify the threats to my network, how can I ever justify the controls? Okay? I need to do it in a language that management can understand. Then I need to implement and monitor controls. So I bought this really nice, expensive firewall. Now it's still in a box. Probably not the best idea. I took care of the network at St. Philip Neri Catholic School down the street off Key Boulevard. And the church area had some old computers. I kept telling him, I said, man, we're having so many issues. I says, why don't you upgrade your computers? And the funniest thing was they said, oh, we did. About 3 years ago. They're still in the closet. We haven't got around to installing them yet. I about had a heart attack. I'm like, what? I said, you bought computers 3 years ago, and they're still in the boxes in the closet. And sure enough, they were. All the new computers were still in boxes in the closet. And they said, we haven't got around to installing them yet. So naturally, I took that upon myself, and that became one of my first priorities, and we installed them. The problem was they were 3 years old already. So, it baffles my mind. Okay, let's continue. Okay, the roles of the communities of interest. Okay, information security, management, users, all those are different aspects or different communities, you can call them, but they all must work together. Does management need to be involved? Oh, most definitely. They need to basically spearhead all this. Information security is what needs to be implemented, and users, obviously, if users don't care, nothing's going to happen. Okay. They're responsible for evaluating the risk controls. Now, should I have the users evaluate risk controls? Probably not. Would a normal user understand what a virus scanner is? Probably not. Would they understand a firewall? Probably not. Okay. Determine which control options are cost effective. So I'm buying this firewall. I have a choice. I can get Zone Alarm, which is free. I can use the Windows Firewall, which comes built into my machine, which is free. Or I could buy one. We have one here called IronPort. I could spend thousands of dollars and get IronPort. What's my best option? Well, considering we're a very large, or not a very large, but we're a somewhat large organization with thousands of computers, Windows Firewall is probably not going to do what we need. So at that point, we could justify the cost of a better solution. Okay. Once I justify it, then I need to acquire it, install it, and make sure it's working. Monitor the system. Okay? All right, risk identification. It says risk management involves identifying, classifying, and prioritizing the risks. Okay? Could be people, could be procedures, could be data, could be software, could be hardware. Let's talk about this. Could data possibly be an item at risk? Sure. We have student grades. If we were to lose all the grades, that would kind of suck. I actually input grades for the summer semester recently. I did all my classes. I put them all in there. I even printed out the copies of them, signed them, and turned it in like I was supposed to. Then I got a call right at the beginning of the fall saying, Ken, we don't have your grades for one class. I'm like, what do you mean? Well, somehow, no idea why, it didn't save. But luckily, I had a printout of it, so I went and just got them and re-input them. But yeah, the data is obviously important. How about software? We spend thousands of dollars on software. Our PeopleSoft upgrade, I think, was a $25 million upgrade. Do you think there's some value to there? Oh, yeah, most definitely. How about hardware? Yeah, the machine might only be $1,000, but, we have quite a few of them. They add up, okay? Okay, plan and organize the process. The first step is to follow the project management discipline, okay? It says get a team together that involves everybody. And let's talk about that for a second. Quite a few years back when we implemented a new firewall here at Rose State, we started the next semester. I don't know, it was summer, fall, or something, spring. And our legal assistance program uses something called Westlaw. Well, Westlaw has to use port 8080. And that was now blocked on the firewall. They said faculty was involved in the firewall decision. But if faculty was involved and legal assistance was involved in it, then they would have known, hey, we need Westlaw to work, and it wouldn't work. It was blocked. I mean, they did open the port and it did work. But the fact that you really need to have everybody involved, okay? Okay, it says the process must be planned out. Periodic deliverable. Are you actually doing something? If you're involved in making a process, making a plan, what are you doing, okay? Review it. Make sure it's being done correctly. Make sure it works. Make sure it's still valid. Okay, tell management what you're doing. Don't just do it. Yeah, they tell you to do it. Don't just tell them what you're doing it. Okay. And you should have timetables like it mentions there. Okay, so we have plan and organize the process, categorize the components, identify the assets, classify the assets, identify the threats, and it says specify the vulnerabilities, and basically you can go both ways. Right? Now, does it mean that once we identify the vulnerabilities, that never changes? No, that changes all the time. There's always new vulnerabilities. Okay, there's always new assets. So, got a new computer today. So, are the threats the same for this computer as they were for the old computer? Probably not. All right. Identifying, it says asset identification. Actually, this we're just going to talk about it now. It says iterative process begins with identification of the asset, including all elements of the organization system, people, processes, data, information. Okay. Again, it has to be done. This whole iterative process. What that means is you do it all the time. Every year we buy new computers. Every year. So obviously something changes every year. We're always getting new software. There's always new threats out there. So that's why it's an iterative process. So the assets are classified and categorized. Now, it mentions people in there. Could people be an asset? Most definitely. You pay people. Certain people get paid more than others. So if you have a very well qualified person, is that not an asset to the company? It sure is. All right. So here we go. People, could be employees, could be entrusted employees, other staff, procedures, data. How about non-employees? Okay. Could they be an asset as well? Well, we could actually be hiring contractors to do stuff. The military hires a lot of contractors. So yeah, they could also be an asset as well. Okay. Hardware could be our system devices, peripherals, networking components. We all think about the computers on our desk, but how about the switch up in the closet that it all connects to? Okay. That's a pretty valuable asset as well. Okay. So, human resources, documentation, data on information assets are more difficult to identify. Yeah. People's hard. What is your skill level? Okay. Is it updated? It was funny. I teach a Cyber Patriot class on weekends during the fall. And was it last year? I think 2012. They asked me to update my resume so I could teach it. I'm like, I've been here for like 13 years. Why do I need to update it? Well, sure enough, I have received some education since then. I've had another master's degree. So, you do need to upgrade it every now and then. Okay? Now here they're talking about people. It should be the position, name, their number, their ID, their supervisor, their security clearance. All that information that pertains to the people. Okay. Procedures, what do you do? Now, if I have a procedure in place to do something, it'd be nice if it was written down so that somebody else could take it in case I'm not here. Okay. Data, classification, the owner, creator, manager. We have some data stored. Who's in charge of it? Who updates it? Who backs it up? Does it get backed up? Where is it backed up to? All that's a portion of it. Okay, hardware. Now, what about it? What is it? I have a desktop sitting here on my desk. Hence the name desktop. What type of computer is it? When did I buy it? When does the warranty expire? What software is installed? It's funny, I got a notification, a couple semesters ago, stating I had illegal software on my system. I was like, what? Well, what it is I have Adobe Acrobat on there. And I actually bought Adobe Acrobat myself for my company. No longer have a company. So I just took it here and installed it on my computers. It's fine to have here, but Rose State didn't buy it for me, so they didn't know about it. Like, whoa, you got some illegal software on here. And I said, no, I don't. And they said, you have Adobe Acrobat? And I said, oh. I bought that myself, and I even have the license key for it and everything. They were fine with it. But again, that's still an asset. That's more of a personal asset. But other things, how about desks? How about furniture? My office, some of you have been in here. I have desks. I bought that desk myself. The school didn't buy it for me. They actually gave me a filing cabinet with a door sitting on top of it. Okay? But yeah, all the attributes, the MAC address, the serial number, the manufacturer, where is it located, all that stuff. Okay? There are automated tools to do this, and Rose State runs them all the time. So that's a good idea there. Classification, what's on it? Okay? Does it store top secret data? I don't know. It says most organizations do not need detailed level of classified use by military federal agencies because we don't have top secret data. We don't have classified data. But we still do have some classification. We have student records. We have personal information. But all that, how is that managed as well? Okay. Security clearance structure. They talk about a need to know. Okay, so could we think of a student records as need to know? Sure, we could. You know, do other students need to know your grade? No, they don't. Do other faculty need to know your grade? Well, possibly. Okay. Do you know? Do other students need to know you're behind on your bills? No. But maybe the financial aid office does need to know that. So, it's really the whole need to know is sometimes more might need to know than you know. Does that make sense? Okay. Then the management of classified data, and they also mentioned the storage, distribution, portability, and destruction. Okay. Where do I store it? How do I move it? How do I destroy it? Okay. Now, I actually was at a conference and I saw a top secret certified CD-ROM destruction machine. Basically, it was a sander. You put the CD-ROM or DVD inside of it, and it sanded it down to basically a clear disk. Okay? I mean, breaking it apart doesn't do it anymore. How about a clean disk policy? I have some top secret data. Do I just leave it out on my desk? Probably not. Dumpster diving. We actually do a project in one of the classes on that. Actually, this class, but I'm not making you do it. With dumpster diving, what do you throw away? Take a look at your trash someday. See what you're actually throwing away in the trash. You'd be surprised what you might find in there. Okay. All right. It says classification schemes. Confidential, internal, public data. So there's a bunch of different schemes, and really the organization's in charge of that. But do you follow this? Do you actually implement what they say? Okay. All right. Asset valuation. What is this stuff worth? So I got a computer on my desk. It's I think going on 3 years old now. Does it have the same value it did 3 years ago? Probably not. What if I have an old IBM Selectric typewriter that way back when cost $3,000? I think in the mid-90s they were right at $3,000. What is the value of that typewriter in 2013? Is it really worth $3,000? Probably not. Okay? Okay, they say is most which information with each information asset, is it critical to the success? Do we need this, whatever it is? Do we need to have computers in the classroom? When I got my degree, my bachelor's degree, there was no computers in the classroom. Trust me, there was no computers. And I was able to learn programming just fine by the guy writing it on the board, and I would go home and put it in my personal home computer. So, all right. Which generates the most revenue? I can think of that in the education environment. If I have a program like our webmaster program, had no graduates, no enrollment. So would we spend money on a program that's not producing any revenue? No, you wouldn't. Okay. What would be most expensive to replace? So should I, better protect something that's very expensive? Most definitely you should. Okay. Would be the most embarrassing or cause greatest liability if revealed? Well, what if I don't want people to know about something? I can't think of an example at the moment, but maybe I want to protect that so no one knows about it. Okay. Here's a sheet. Okay. The sample inventory worksheet. What is their item here? It's a document set 1 is the logical BOL to outsourcers. Confidential. Impact on probability high. So this document they're talking about here, it's a confidential document, and if it gets lost or something, it's very, very critical. Okay, let's look at one that's not. Okay, customer service request via email. It's normally private. You don't want people to know about it. And what happens? What is the value on profitability? A small amount, because, could you live without it? Probably, but you never really know. Okay? All right. Now let's talk about prioritizations. It's create weighting of each category based on the answers to questions. Okay, which we're going to see some examples here, but just like we saw in that worksheet here, okay, does it have an impact on profitability? Do you make money with it? Okay, calculate relative importance of each asset using a weighted factor analysis and list the assets in order of importance. So what would be the most important? Here at our school, if I'm thinking generally of the physical assets, probably our computer systems over in IT services are probably pretty important. Okay. Could we live without chairs? Yeah, we could replace them pretty cheaply, but could we live without a computer system? Probably not. All right. Here they show the weighting. Okay, they talk about the different criteria and the different ways. So this ESD document, impact to revenue is 0.8. Okay. But look at the weighted score 75. Okay, impact the public 0.5. Let's find one that's lower. Look at the customer order via SSL. Okay, look at the weighted score 100 because it really could affect your public image. If I'm accepting credit card orders via SSL and I don't encrypt it, well, boy, that could be a big issue on revenue. People could be stealing credit card information. I could be losing money. The public could lose faith in me. Just all kinds of issues. All right. Okay, identify and prioritize. It says realistic threats need investigation. Unimportant threats are set aside. Now, does that mean you never look at them? Probably not. You know, a prime example is room 219 upstairs. The computers were originally arranged in a different way. And they had the cords running across the floor with this, carpet runner over them. And that was there for a couple semesters. And I'm like, we really need to change this room so people don't have to walk over the cords each day. And I'm like, it's not that important. I said, yeah, but the first time a student trips on that and smashes his head into the table, then you'll think it's important. Then just by me saying that, it kind of upgraded the priority of it, and they rearranged the room. Okay? So sometimes unimportant to one person might not be unimportant to another. Okay. Threat assessment. Which threat presents danger to assets? So would theft impact my office computer? Most definitely. Would tornado? Most definitely. But which one's more likely to happen? Probably theft. So I'd probably spend more money locking or more time locking my door than worry about a tornado. Okay? How much would it cost to recover it? Now, what if I get infected with a virus? What's the cost to that? Well, it's not always a dollar value. Sometimes it's time and effort. How long will my computer be down? Imagine if I was the only person enrolling students and I get infected with the virus. Obviously, I can no longer enroll students. That would be a big issue. But now, if there was 10 of us enrolling students and I get infected with the virus, well, not as much. Okay? So the cost is not always monetarily. Okay? Which threat requires the greatest expenditure to prevent? So, physical theft or tornado, which one would cost more to prevent? Probably the tornado. I mean, it's kind of hard to prevent them, but I could maybe have a backup location. I could have a tougher building. Whereas theft, a lot easier to prevent. All right. Here we go. Espionage or trespassing. An example could be unauthorized access or data collection. Information extortion, sabotage, software attacks. Just all kinds of threats, and even theft. Lots of threats to information security. Okay, vulnerability identification. It says specific avenues threat agents can exploit to attack an information asset are called vulnerabilities. So the internet, would an internet be considered a vulnerability? Most definitely. They could go in through the internet to get in and steal data, to infect me with a virus. Okay. This process works best when people with diverse backgrounds within the organization work iteratively in a series of brainstorming sessions. I always joke that if I'm deciding on something, it's pretty easy. Whatever Ken says goes. Now, if there's two of us deciding on something, it's a little tougher, but we can probably do it. But what if I have 20 people in a room, we all want to decide on something? It's probably pretty tough. Because we have diverse background, diverse knowledge levels. So, that's a good thing when it comes to vulnerability identification. Maybe vulnerability, let's imagine our secretary. Well, let's go with the cleaning crew. Okay, we got some people to clean our building. Do you think they really understand what a virus is? They probably think a virus is something you get by touching a dirty drinking fountain. So really having someone with a diverse background will really help you understand it. Okay. At the end of all this, you should have a list of assets and their vulnerabilities. Okay. Risk assessment says evaluates the relative risk for each vulnerability. Based on our list of vulnerabilities we just created, what is the risk of them? Okay. Then what is the scoring of these? Now again, these can change as well. It says create a method for evaluating the risk. And look at likelihood. What's the likelihood of a tornado? Pretty high, depending on when it might happen. What month. What's the likelihood of a freeze or something? Again, it depends on the time of year. Okay. It says numeric scale 0.1 to 1.0 for high. It says 0 not used unless vulnerabilities with 0 likelihood are removed. Okay. Is there ever, if you're listing a vulnerability and you say there's 0 chance or 0 likelihood of it, is that really a vulnerability? If it can never happen, if you're saying it has 0 likelihood, does that mean it will never happen? So why list it? Is it actually a vulnerability? I would say no. Okay, you selected rating model consistently. In other words, do it the same with all of them. All right, and use external references. Okay. Determination. It says for the purpose of risk assessment, risk equals the likelihood of a vulnerability occurrence. Okay. So there are viruses out there. What's the likelihood that that virus will affect me? That's the risk. Time values, or how long or how often it will happen, minus percentage of risks already controlled, plus an element of uncertainty. Do we ever really know everything? No, we don't. Never. Okay. Possible controls. What are we going to do to protect against these risks? Just because I like a Linksys router, does that mean that's the only type of router out there? Heck no. There's lots of them. So I need to identify different possibility of controls. Since for each threat and associated vulnerability to have residual risk, actually we haven't covered residual risk, but residual risk is risk that has not been controlled at this point. Okay? It says residual risk is a risk that remains to information after existing controls have been applied. Okay? So I wear my seatbelt. I have airbags in my car and car insurance. Does that mean I will never ever have a wreck? No, it does not mean that. But I have added some controls in place. Again, I have my airbags, I have my seatbelt, but those really protect me after the wreck. What do I have to protect me from a wreck? Maybe headlights, maybe turn signals. But again, is that still going to protect me totally? No. So there is still some residual risk. Okay. Now let's talk about some of the controls. Policies, programs, and technologies. I'm pretty sure we cover each of those, I hope. Well, let's talk about it here for a second, just be safe. And policies, that's like our password policy. Do you have a policy in place for locking up the classroom at the end of the day? Yes, we do. It's kind of a weird one, but we'll talk about that another time. Okay. Could have programs. Could have a virus scanner in place or something. Could have technologies, could have a firewall in place as well. So a lot of different controls out there. Okay, we need to document this. This is a final summary comprised in ranked vulnerability risk worksheet. We should be able to read this, which we're going to see on the next slide, but determine what is the vulnerability, what is the likelihood, what is the risk rating overall. Okay, here we go. Risk rating factor is 11 for the top one. So according to this, okay, customer service request via email, the likelihood is 0.2, email destruction, so, impact on revenue. So I would say customer service email is a lot less important than customer order via SSL. See how the SSL's got the 100? Actually, all the SSLs have the 100, okay? So they're ranked here. All right. Deliverables. We have the classification worksheet, which we just saw. Has the risks and their impact. We have the weighted criteria. We have the ranked vulnerability worksheet. So these are items to help us determine the risks. And this should not be a static document. It should be fluid. It should be updated all the time. All right. Now let's talk about some risk control strategies. Defend, transfer, mitigate, accept, and terminate. I'm not going to talk about each one of those. Okay, to defend against a risk. It says attempt to prevent exploitation of the vulnerability. So I'm going to do my best to defend against it. Okay, this is the preferred. I'm going to have a cop at the gate preventing someone from coming in. This is the best way of doing it. It could be through countering threats, removing vulnerabilities, limiting access, stuff like that. Okay. The way the common method to say here is application of a policy. So we have a policy for passwords. We have a policy for locking the building. Do we actually implement those? And then training and education. We hire people. We have physical plant people here on campus. They mow the lawn. Do they have access to email? Do they know how to lock their computers when they're done? That kind of stuff. And then apply technologies as appropriate. You could also transfer it. It says control approach that attempts to shift the risk to other assets or other organizations or processes. It says if lacking, organizations should hire individuals or firms that provide security management and administrative expertise. So if you can't handle it, hire it out. It says they may then transfer risks associated with management to complex systems to another organization. So we outsourced our website. So what did we get from that? Has our risk lowered? Yes, we transferred the risk of our website compromise to an outside organization. Now, does that mean we have no risk at all? Well, no. We still have to pay it. And what happens if they don't protect it? Well, we're still kind of out there as well. So we still have some, but we did transfer the majority of it. Now let's talk about mitigation. This is attempts to reduce impact on vulnerability exploited through planning and preparation. We're going to do our best to prevent this from happening. Okay. Maybe an incident response plan. So if something does happen, I want to have a plan in place to take care of it. Disaster recovery plan. If something does happen, I want to be able to, recover quickly. And also the continuity plan. I want to continue to function in the event of something happening. We have a lot of tornadoes here. But can we continue to function with tornadoes? That kind of stuff. Okay? Acceptance. There comes a point where you have to accept it. It says doing nothing to protect the vulnerability and accepting the outcome of its exploitation. Okay? But I don't particularly like that. Sometimes you do your best, but I guess they list that as residual risk. But there's also residual risk left over after I've done all I can. Okay. This accept is also valid only when particular function, service, information, or asset does not justify cost of protection. Okay. So let's try to think of an example of this. Can't think of an example. But if it's going to be too expensive to protect something, maybe at that point I'll just accept it. I can't think of a good example, but so we're going to leave it at that. Terminate says directs the organization to avoid those business activities that include uncontrollable risks. May seek alternate mechanisms. So I'm going to do all I can. If I can't fix it in any way, stop using it. Okay? All right. It says risk control strategy. The level of threat and value of the asset play major roles. Okay? Major rule of thumb can be applied when the vulnerability exists, when the vulnerability can be exploited. All this, your strategy must take this into account. Okay, when attacker's cost is less than the potential gain, when potential loss is substantial, so all those need to go into your strategy. Okay, here we go. Identify our valuable threats. Okay, then it goes down to threat and vulnerability exist, yes or no. Okay, then the system as designed. This is the system we designed to use. Is system vulnerable? No. Then there's no risk. But obviously all systems are somewhat vulnerable. So is it vulnerable? Yes. Is it exploitable? Well, if there's a vulnerability that cannot be exploited, then no, it's not a risk. But if it could be exploited, then we have some sort of vulnerability. Okay? So now we have a risk. Okay? Is the attacker's gain greater than the cost? No. Okay, so you break into my system, but what you get out of it is really of no value. I'm just going to accept it. Okay, maybe, I don't know, I store the logos for the Rose State catalog or something. Whoops, someone got into that. They got our pictures. No big deal. I can live with that. Okay, but if it's greater, that is expected loss to organization acceptable level? No. Okay, is it greater than the acceptable level? No, but I'm going to accept it as well. So I'm expecting to lose some stuff. Okay, stores expect theft, but how much theft are they willing to accept? Are they willing to accept a small amount? Sure, but if the amount of theft is greater than they're willing to accept, then risk becomes unacceptable, and they must do something about it. Hopefully, I explained that okay. All right, feasibility says before deciding on a strategy, all information about economic, non-economic consequences must be explored. Okay? Basically, can we do this? We want to implement whatever. Okay, so I guess in Oklahoma, we have a lot of tornadoes. Maybe we need to come up with a big shield to cover the entire city to protect us. Is that feasible? Could we possibly? No, that ain't happening. So basically, the feasibility of doing something like that would be not so much. Okay. Cost benefit says begun by evaluating worth of assets to be protected and the loss if they're compromised. What is the value to this asset? What is the cost? What is the benefit from implementing a certain control? Okay. So items that affect cost of control or safeguard include the cost of development or acquisition. You might develop it in-house. You might buy one. Training fees, implementation, service costs. Our PeoplesOft system here costs us $25 million. Costed another $10 million to install it. So that would be a cost of implementation. It could be service costs. A lot of people buy a virus scanner, like they buy a computer with a McAfee on it. It comes with 90 days free. They never pay for it after that point, so they're never protected. So service costs are always part of it. Cost of maintenance. Okay? We're looking to upgrade our Adobe upstairs in our labs. For one classroom, it's $9,600 a year. I don't know about you, but to have Adobe one classroom for $9,600 is a little excessive. There ain't no way the student service fees even cover that. So at this point, I don't know what we're going to do. Because that is crazy. So, what is the cost of it? The cost of maintenance. Yeah. I use FTK in my classes. It costs $2,500 a year. That's better. I mean, it's a lot better than $10,000. I don't know, I just freaking out about the Adobe thing. Then the benefit. What is the benefit of this? So by buying this whatever, what is the benefit to the organization? Okay. The valuations, the process for assigning financial value to each asset. What is the actual value of this computer on my desk? Okay. What are the value of these monitors on my desk? Do they have any value? Obviously, right? Process result in an estimate of potential loss per risk. Okay. So if you have a risk, how much money am I expected to lose on it? Okay. Then we have to call it ALE, annualized loss expectancy, is equal to the single loss times the rate of occurrence. So we'll say theft. Okay. What does it cost for someone to steal a computer, or for me to replace this one computer if it's stolen? How many times do I expect it to happen over the years? Okay, then that will be my annual loss expenditure. Okay, then that is equal to the single loss expenditure is equal to the value times exposure. So again, what is the cost of it? What is the odds of it being stolen? So, all right. It says CBA determines if alternative being evaluated is worth costs incurred in the vulnerability. Okay. So basically, are we saving money? In the long run, are we making us better off? Okay. Alright, so let's continue on. Alright. So selection, implementation, control is not the end process. They must be monitored, evaluated on an ongoing basis. So I installed this firewall. Does anyone look at it? Does anyone make sure it's functioning? Does anyone ever check the logs? Kind of an important thing. Okay? So this process continues as long as the organization continues to function. As long as you're using this control, you need to be evaluating it, monitoring it. Maybe there's a better control out there. Maybe you want to switch. Okay? Here's the risk control cycle. Identify our assets, prepare the vulnerability worksheet, develop the control, implement it, assess the control. Are they working? No. Go back and develop a new one. If they are working, yes. Then a plan for maintenance. Measure risk. Is the risk acceptable? Yes. If not, then go back and start all over again. So depending on what you implement, I mean, really, this is an ongoing process. All right. Quantitative versus qualitative. Okay. It says performing the previous steps using actual values is known as quantitative. Exactly how much money, exactly how many risks, that's quantitative. Okay. Possible to complete steps using evaluation process based on characteristics is qualitative. Okay. In other words, rather than dollar values, we're looking at the quality of it. Trying to think of an example of that. Can't at the moment. Maybe in a minute I will. Okay. It says utilizing scales rather than specific estimates relieves organizations from difficulty to determine exact values. Is it hard to determine a value? Well, actually it is. Because things change at all times. Again, we talked about a computer that's 5 years old. What's the value of it? What's the value of that IBM Selectric typewriter that was bought 10 years ago? Probably zero now. Okay. Benchmarking and best practices. So there's an alternative approach to risk management. Other people have probably gone through what you're doing. So benchmarking is a process of seeking out and studying practices in other organizations that one own organization wants to duplicate. Okay. So I want to go see what another college is doing. I want to see what another store is doing to protect their stuff. Okay, you'll notice that a lot of times. Somebody will implement something, then another same type of store implements the same type of thing. You don't think they're learning from one to another? Okay, could be based on metrics, could be based on processes. Okay, so that's what benchmarking is. Okay. Then we have what's called the standards of due care. When adopting levels of security for the legal defense, organization shows it has done what is prudent. I have done everything I can to protect this. But does that mean, basically means that's what everybody does. Everybody protects this to a certain level. Okay. Then due diligence is demonstration that organization is diligent in ensuring that implementing standards continues to provide level of protection. So I have this firewall in place. Is it doing what it's supposed to be doing? Am I making sure it's working? Am I keeping its maintenance updated? So am I doing what I need to be doing? Okay. So this failure to support standards of due care, due diligence can leave you open to legal liability. If something happens and someone can prove I didn't do my best, first of all, I didn't even see what was available out there. That's an issue. Or I didn't do my best to implement the controls to protect. That's another issue. Okay. Best business practices says security efforts that provide a superior level of information protection. But again, that changes at all times. When considering best practices, does it resemble the target best practices? So am I looking at best practices from an aircraft manufacturer when I'm an educational institution? Probably wouldn't be a good option. Okay. Are resources at hand similar? Do we have the same type of organization? Is a big deal. Do we have the same type of resources? Okay. Do they have the same threat environment? So if I'm looking at a school in Alaska and a school in Oklahoma, are they different? Well, yeah, the temperature, the environment, all that's different. So really, are they in the same threat environment? Okay. All right. Problems with the application of it. So organizations don't talk to each other. I look at what you're doing, but then we never talk. Okay. No two organizations are identical. They aren't. If they were, they would be the same organization. Best practices are a moving target. They change all the time. Hey, I just figured out something new and something better. Walmart's implemented something called Scan and Go, where you can now take your mobile phone, go through the store, on certain stores, like you can do it over on Midwest Boulevard in Reno at the Walmart Neighborhood Market, but you can do it down at other Walmarts, but you can't do it in Del City. But you can walk through the store and scan the items as you put them in your cart. Okay? Then you can walk up to the self-checkout, click the Scan and Go button, and scan the barcode that appears on the screen, and pay your money. Now, it'll automatically charge you for whatever you scan. Now, my question is, how do they know what I put in my cart? I put 20 items in there, but only scanned 15 of them. Were they actually following me around the store? I don't know, because I don't have to take them out and weigh them. But so Walmart's implementing that. Are other stores implementing that? Okay. Is it a good thing to do? Are self-checkouts a good thing to do? Some store, Costco, I think, is removing them because there's too much theft. Okay. The best practices when it comes to information security. What's the best firewall in the market right now? What's the best way to protect viruses? All that kind of stuff. Okay. So knowing what was going on in the information security industry in recent years through benchmarking doesn't necessarily prepare you what's next. Things change all the time. There's new viruses, new threats every day. And just because we compared with our other organization on January 1st, something new comes out February 1st. We need to be able to react to that. All right. Baselining says an analysis for measuring against established standards. So the standard is this, and we have this. You can kind of think of like the gas mileage on your car. This car is supposed to get such and such a gas mileage. That would be kind of like baseline. An information security baselining is comparison of security activities and events against future performance. Okay, you look at it today, is it performing the same way? Are we having the same threats? Is it, just something to compare it against? Useful during baselines to have a guide of the overall process. Okay, all right. Feasibility studies. We have organizational. It says examine how well proposed alternatives will contribute to organization's effectiveness, efficiency, and overall operation. So should I outsource? Should I go online? That kind of stuff. Could be operational. It says examine user management acceptance and support with the overall requirements, okay, of the stakeholders. Okay, are people willing to accept it? Technical. Examine if the organization has or can acquire the technology necessary to implement and support the control alternatives. Can you do what's needed? Can you expect a 10-year-old mail server to continue to function forever? Obviously we did. Okay, political. It's another story. Defines what can and cannot occur based on consequences in relationships. Okay, so what can happen on consensus, not consequences, sorry, consensus. Okay, almost done with this chapter. All right, organization must define a level of risk it can live with. How much risk are you willing to accept? Your risk appetite is how much? How much, with car insurance, my deductible is kind of like my risk appetite. Do I want to have a zero deductible on my car insurance? Or do I want to have a $250 deductible on my car insurance? Trust me, zero deductible is darn expensive. $1,000 deductible is much cheaper. Because with a $1,000 deductible, I'm willing to accept some of the risk. It's kind of like when you get a rental car. You look at the cost of the rental car. Did you ever notice all the insurance they offer you? The insurance costs more than the darn daily fee of the car. I went on a conference and Rose State sent me and I was getting a rental car. They told me to purchase all available insurance. So that was awesome. I went up there, they always said, "Would you like?" Oh, I said, "Dude, I want every insurance you have." Because Rose State didn't want to be liable if I wrecked a car in another state. They're like, you know what? Even though it costs more, our risk appetite is very low. We don't want any risk. So you buy this, we're going to pay for it. If anything happens to that car, we're covered. So that's what we did. Residual risk is risk that has not been completely removed, shifted, or planned for. So whatever's left over after I've done everything I can. All right. Here's our residual risk. Amount of threat reduced by safeguards. Basically the amount that's left over. The residual is at the top. The risk that has not been covered by one of the safeguards. So I've got some controls in place. I've got some policies in place. I've done all I can. I got the technology in place. But there's a slight risk. I can still, somebody can still open up an email that has a thread in it that the virus scanner hasn't updated to yet, so there's still a risk there. All right, documenting results. I think this is the part most people screw up on. You should always document what you've done. It says, at a minimum, each information asset threat pair should have documented control strategies. What did you do to protect this? Because you might not be there all the time. So the person that replaces you, how are they going to know what you did? What if you have to go to court and prove that you did due diligence? Be nice if this was written down. Another option, document the outcome of control strategy for each information asset vulnerability pair as an action plan. It says risk assessment may be documented in a topic-specific report. It has to be documented in order to know you did it. I was actually talking to someone this week about unemployment. I guess now if you're on unemployment, you can apply for jobs online and just tell them you did it. But what happens if they go to audit you? Just telling them you did it might not be enough. You might want to document it. So document's always there to help you. All right, last slide. Okay. All right, it says convince budget authority to spend up to a value of the asset to protect from identified threats. So I need to spend so much money to protect the organization. I was up teaching a class in Missouri, and I was talking to one of the schools out there. I was teaching to a bunch of different teachers for a bunch of different schools. And their budget process involves buying all IT required items first, right off the top, everything needed, and then divide the remaining budget against everything else in the school. So what do you think of that plan? Well, we obviously wouldn't be having this mail server problem if we had that implementation. I think it's a good idea. because they know technology is important. Okay? It says final control choice may be balance of controls, providing greatest value as to many threat level pairs as possible. And it says organizations looking to implement controls that don't involve such complex and exact and dynamic calculations. So basically, you want to get something implemented that's not going to be too tough to do. All right. So that is the end of the chapter. We talked about all this stuff. Don't you love how I go over the summaries? But yeah, we talked about a whole bunch of stuff. So all right. Hopefully, you can understand this chapter better.